Let's go down to Tasmania now and catch up with Liberal Senator Eric Abetz. Eric, good to talk to you. How do we have in this federation a national approach to pandemic management? Because it's just not happening. Obviously, the federal government doesn't want these states throwing up hard borders, but they keep doing it.
I hear what you say. First of all, I would say that those that are on the space mission will undoubtedly be COVID safe for the next 6 months, and they might return to Earth when we have a vaccine. That said, the Tasmanian government has always taken a very cautious approach in relation to COVID. We have an elderly population, we have more comorbidities, therefore we are, if you like, the most at-risk population in the Commonwealth, and the Premier has taken a very cautious approach. And until we have a full understanding as to what's happening in South Australia, I think it is the appropriate course, disruptive though it is, but the consequences may be very real.
But what about those people who are on the planes to Perth and Darwin and they were fine when they took off and then they're thrown into quarantine like that? The rules changed on them mid-flight. Surely that is a way over-the-top reaction. It's unfair to those people and it's a disproportionate response to the level of risk here.
Look, I hear what you're saying. I think most of your viewers would understand that I've been one of those more inclined for a relaxed border situation. But that said, the people of Tasmania are under no misapprehension that that which the Premier is doing is done with only one thing in mind, and that is the best interests of the people of Tasmania. I get that, and I think he has the very strong support of my fellow Tasmanians in the actions that he's taking.
It was disheartening, really, to hear, disturbing, really, to hear Dr. Andrew Miller talking about states like Western Australia and others not having done enough to prepare for contact tracing, not having those QR codes at restaurants and bars and the like. We're 10 months into this pandemic. Other states have rolled that out. Surely the only way to manage this, the virus isn't going to disappear. Even if we have a reasonably effective vaccine, it's not going to disappear altogether, and that'll take a long while to roll out. We've got to get better in the states at actually managing clusters, isolating them and moving on without the blunt instruments of lockdowns and curfews and shutting businesses.
And if I might say, I think Tasmania did an exceptionally good job. When we did have a breakout on the northwest coast, we were able to isolate and lock down an isolated area, deal with the situation whilst allowing the rest of the state to operate as near as normal. And I think that's got to be the way forward. But we also need to be a lot better at contact tracing, etc. And clearly in South Australia, it doesn't seem to be up to the standard that we need. And therefore, hopefully this will be a lesson to everybody, to every state, that if we are going to open our borders, which we must do, then we do need to ensure that we have the appropriate mechanisms in place to deal with any outbreaks.
Yeah, like me, Eric, I reckon you'd be pretty much a states' rights kind of a guy, but doesn't this pandemic and the management of it show a bit of a weakness in our public health regimen, and perhaps we need to re-examine that so that we can have some federal guidelines? For instance, we talked before about that federally agreed, that nationally agreed definition of a hotspot, and that seems to have been thrown out the window by a number of states today.
You're quite right. I am a federalist. I think our federation works exceptionally well, but I think we could do with a bit more cooperative federalism and also not being so reliant on the federal government when it comes to the bigger issues. And so if a sovereign state wants to call itself a sovereign state, it has to act like a sovereign state and not rely so much on federal government assistance, etc. And so I would say to all the states that that is one of the consequences of being a sovereign state. But that said, Tasmania, I think, is more than pulling its weight overall in relation to the recovery. Tasmania, because of its budgetary position, has been able to spend more than other states on a state domestic product basis. And so I think we're doing well from a Tasmanian perspective, but we can always do better, and all the states need to do better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've got to continue this debate. No country, no state has got this perfect. It's an evolving situation, and we've got to debate the approaches. And I think that we've seen some very heavy-handed responses from some of the state governments so far. Thanks so much for joining us, Eric. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Senator Eric Abetz there live from Hobart.